Hey, this is Ash with a Boys Bible Study special announcement. The Boys Bible Study Patreon is now live. Go to patreon.com/Boys Bible Study. If you pledge $5 per month, you will get access to all Boys Bible Study exclusive bonus episodes. That's 2 to 4 additional Boys Bible Study episodes per month that you will not ever get on our public feed. Want to check it out? Go there right now and pledge, and you immediately get access to our first bonus episode, Last Chance School, out right now on patreon.com/Boys Bible Study. All right, season 2, let's go. Welcome back to Boys Bible Study, Season 2. We're back. So nice to be back with you all. Today from your cast of boys, it is myself, Ash, and my co-host, Scott. And with us is our very, very special guest, Vera Drew. How you doing, Vera?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming.
I'm a big fan of the show.
Thank you.
I'm excited to kick off Season 2 with you.
Hell yeah.
We ourselves are honored. Mutual fans of each other's work. I'm absolutely loving your new show. I was hoping you would tell everyone listening at home about what you're working on right now.
Yeah, I just started a new monthly web series called Hot Topics with Vera Drew. It's the only show with the express purpose of getting me sponsored by Hot Topic. And the idea is basically, as a trans woman who came out in her late 20s, I never got to have my high school emo girl phase.
Yeah.
So now I'm trying to do it, and I'm trying to do it on Hot Topic's dime.
Yes.
And
it's what she deserves.
It really is. And I'm kind of heartbroken that they haven't sponsored me yet.
So no bites yet?
They like the show. They like the show.
Okay. That's a start.
But my follower count is a little low. I technically need 5,000 followers to be considered an influencer in their eyes.
Really?
So even though I'm Emmy nominated, I've worked on every classic alt comedy show that's come out in the last 10 years. But that means nothing to this company. And just like make a trans girl's dreams come true, guaranteed ticket to heaven. So
yeah, come on, don't they want to get into heaven? Yeah. I know they make all this this hellish gothy witchy type stuff, but everyone wants to get to heaven at the end. Like, come on.
Yeah.
But there's one easy way to remedy that problem, and that is if everyone listening right now goes and gives you a follow at Vera Drew 22. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Twitter and Instagram. Follow my girl right now, Vera Drew 22, and check out your new show. It's called Hot Topics.
It's called Hot Topics. And I'm doing it every month. If I get enough people on board, I might try to do it twice a month, just because it's so much fun. Mm-hmm. But it's so much work.
Yeah, of course. I mean, just from the first episode alone, it's like impeccably produced, honestly. The editing is so good. The production quality is so good. It's really funny. It just looks like every moment of it was made with care. So it doesn't surprise me that it takes you a long time to make them, It's
kind of crazy because when I started writing all these, all the stuff I talk about on the show were these monologues I was just writing, and I wasn't really sure what they were for. They weren't even comedic. And the idea initially was just I was just going to burn through all this shit that I had written and not really put too much work into it. But I got so into the idea, and I do just genuinely love Hot Topic. Most of what I wear is from there.
Yeah.
They still, and this sounds like a plug, and it kind of is, because I am trying to become a hashtag HT fanatic.
Yeah.
But they've been consistent for the last 30 years. They still sell Marilyn Manson shirts.
That's a good point. They are extremely consistent. consistent.
Yeah, no, they really nailed their niche down, and they've culturally occupied that place for decades.
If Russell Carlisle had gone to Hot Topic first when he came into the future, he would have been like, "Oh, this is my local store." It
absolutely
looked exactly the same as before.
he would have the teens in the diner would have listened to whatever he was saying. He probably would have made a much better impression on the future if he would have just stopped at a Hot Topic first instead of fucking J.C. Penney to get some suits. Like, come on.
Yeah.
With that, let's introduce the movie that we brought Vera here to talk about today. We watched the 2002 Christian movie classic by the Cristiano brothers, Time Changer. This is a movie that's very dear to our hearts. All of us had seen it before. Vera actually did a re-edit of this film for Everything is Terrible.
Yeah.
One of my favorite re-edits, honestly.
Thank you.
It's been a while since I saw it. What aspects of the film did you choose to focus on?
So I kind of like took the plot and really condensed it down to, I think it's like about 12 minutes long.
Yeah.
I just really leaned into, like, I think what I really love about this movie is like there's so many like weird performances in it, and there's like some actually kind of like just bizarre sci-fi. So I just kind of leaned into like the Cronenberg-y Lynch vibes of it.
Yes, which is very prominent in this piece. Both of those directors came to mind while watching
Heavily
this,
influenced
honestly.
the Cristiano brothers.
Yes.
And use some of the good steampunk production design too.
Yes. Yeah. And I made a point of, I was really into, I never saw the movie, but the new Blade Runner movie, the soundtrack is really good. And I think I used pretty much that score entirely. And I did a lot of visual effects. My version of Time Changer is much gorier than the version we just watched. It was actually hard to watch this because the entire time I was like, "Oh, my edit's better."
I know. I kept expecting that now too, and they didn't give it to me.
Is that edit still up, or did it get lost in the carnage of the Everything is Terrible channel getting deleted? Or do you have it up on your YouTube?
I think it's still up. If not, it'll be up by the time this airs. I'll make sure it's back up there.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love to make sure.
Yeah, we should put a link in the episode.
Good idea. Yeah, that way. Yeah. That way, the faithful from any time period you're in, as long as you have internet access.
That's right.
Doesn't matter. All are welcome. Whether you come from 1890, 1990, doesn't matter. You're all welcome into the fold. And that's what I loved about Time Changer. It was about bringing people together from all times in the worship of the man who started it all, Jesus, our Lord, our God.
That's what you got out of it, huh?
Yeah, sure. I got a couple things from it.
All I can think about from the movie, the thing I got out of it the most is that he saw a movie, and the first movie he wasn't into, and then he's like, he has a conversation later that's like, movies are bad. And I'm like, this is sad.
Yeah, man, he didn't see the right movie. Come on.
What if he had seen Time Changer?
Well, they kind of imply at the end that he is the screenwriter of Time Changer.
Yeah.
Too, because we spoil on the show, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
No one actually wants to watch this shit except for us, so it doesn't matter.
Only we do.
It's like what I respect about you guys is it's like kind of the truly most Catholic thing you can do. What were you guys raised as?
Evangelical.
Evangelical.
Yeah. And I'm Lutheran. So both of us are Protestants, but I do think that we have a Catholic love of discipline and ritual.
Yeah.
I think we can relate in that way to the Catholic experience, but we are Protestants. What about you?
I was raised Catholic, and I still, in many ways, consider myself culturally Catholic.
Yes.
Catholic, in like the way that like a non-practicing Jew would consider themselves culturally Jewish, perhaps, because I've held on to so much from my religious upbringing, but really I don't really remember any of the biblical teachings. I just remember all the guilt and the internalized transphobia.
Hell yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what keeps the world turning, baby.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Catholicism has always been so interesting to me because like I find it to be the most pagan form of Christianity. It's just like very interesting to me because there's like all these emphasis on like there's props, there's like beads and statues and like candles and like all these different saints and
false idols and symbology.
There's a lot of false idols. You motherfuckers always worshiping false idols. Come on.
Decoration and dressing up.
It's crazy though because like a lot of the Yeah, it's like it's, and I mean, I guess what it was is probably just like during the Inquisition, they were just like it was cultural appropriation, like they were
Right.
burning the witches that they were stealing ideas from, and then trying to get people like, oh, you like lighting incense? Well, we do that over here too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially like I've gone to some different Orthodox services a couple times, and they really get into it, like lots of incense and slow processions, like every single service.
That's fucking sick.
Yeah.
Dude, Protestantism is so boring. I don't know about evangelical.
Yeah, I know what you mean. No, the church I went to was like borderline mega church.
Okay.
So like the worship band took it like real seriously and had like band members who were like professional musicians and like more towards the like that type of entertainment.
That's pretty cool, actually. Yeah. I don't know. My Lutheran church services growing up were like always fine, but everything was just a little lackluster. There wasn't really much thought put at all into like trying to make it this really like cathartic experience. It's all very sort of like mild, and you go through the service, you know. I don't know.
Kind of like paying your dues. Like I definitely went.
Yeah.
It felt
and
like an hour.
Yeah, and it's not like, you know, it's not the worst. Like I grew up in pretty pleasant church environments, but there's just I just felt like with Catholicism, for instance, it was very appealing to me because there seemed like there was so much mysticism and like mystery and ritual involved in a way that was missing from the church services of my youth.
I mean, I'm people who know me know that I am pretty witchy.
Right.
And my grandfather was a Freemason.
Really?
I'm not. I wear a Masonic ring. I am not a Mason because I'm a girl.
Right.
Although I guess if I would have joined as a man, they allow trans women if they join when they're closeted. it's kind of nuts.
No way.
I think it's just to keep membership up because nobody's really Masons anymore. But that's beside the point. Yeah, like a couple years ago when I really started getting into the occult, I really was into like Christian mysticism, and I still kind of am. Like, and that's why like stuff like this movie is really baffling to me. Like when I hear people talk about it just from the angle of like salvation and stuff, it's just like there's so much like weird metal shit though that like is built into your religion, but all you focus on is just hating people. But yeah, Catholicism is still like they've held on to like all the like Rosicrucian stuff. Like they're like most Protestant and Catholic sanctuaries were built by Masons, so there's sacred geometry and stuff. Sorry, this is a comedy podcast.
No, this is
that's great.
First of all, it's a multidisciplinary podcast. Second of all, I could talk about the Freemasons all day. I honestly have been tempted to try to join the Masons at some point in my life. I may try. I think it's just like very interesting.
What do you got to do to sign up?
I think you have to pay money and you have to be like referred by someone. I mean, you have to pay dues. It's like, you know, you can't just walk in. But you know, my favorite occultist, Manly P. Hall, who, you know, made the Philosophical Research Society and did so much for like the occult scholarship, and he was such an LA figure too, which is very interesting. But he famously was like a 33rd degree Mason or whatever the highest degree is, and like he sort of saw Freemasonry as like a path into higher religious and occult study and appreciation. And I've been fascinated by it from that angle.
Yeah, it was like they were using Hermetic magic, which people date back to like Egyptian times and stuff like that. And I also imagine early Christians were still doing it too. And like my grandfather was a 33rd degree Mason.
Really?
And from his vantage point, the Masons were always this kind of like, because there's kind of this like weird focus on like goddess energy there, which is funny because it's like a men only organization. But it always kind of struck me as like Christianity but witchy, which is kind of really compelling to me.
Very much so.
Totally.
Me too. No, that writing that line between the two definitely is very fascinating to me.
Because I get genuinely sad when I think about the people that buy into this stuff, because it's like there might be something to gather from the idea of somebody who like cared about poor people.
Yeah.
And like,
Sure.
you know, hated the government.
Yes.
Like,
Right.
could be maybe something we like all like aspire to, but it's like never been the focus for anybody, which is always kind of breaks my heart.
Yeah, no, totally.
No,
That's actually kind of what pulled me away from the church in the end, is that like I realized the like anarchist punk kids that I liked were much more in lines of what I thought Jesus was about than anybody at the church I was going to.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why this movie too is like hearing, because like the focus is so on like the teachings of Christ have to accompany the, you know,
Discussions of morality.
and like
And
like,
the judgment of God, which those things should be like separate, I think. I don't like he's so judgy that the whole point's like he's really judgy.
oh my god,
The whole
he's
movie.
the entire movie he's whining.
Oh yes, absolutely. Let's introduce some of the basic characters and concepts of this movie, so listeners will have a context.
Our protagonist, Russell Carlisle.
Yes, Russell Carlisle is a professor at a seminary, and his presence is the year 1890. That's how the movie opens. The movie opens with many chamber discussions by scholarly men in the year 1890.
We cannot always mention the name of Jesus. It may not be received, especially by those already offended by the church or brought up in another religion.
But Jesus is the authority behind his commands, and people need to understand this fact.
There's like 7 scenes in the first act that are everybody saying the exact same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
There could easily be one scene, but there's 7.
Yes, and we have a very distinguished cast. David Morin plays our protagonist, Russell Carlisle. One of his fellow professors we all recognized, is a man named Richard Reel. That's the actor. He portrayed a character apparently named Dr. Wiseman in the movie. But Richard Reel is just an interesting actor because he's been in so much. The first thing I clocked him from was the movie Mysterious Skin, which is a Greg Araki movie. I can't remember when it was made.
2003.
2003. Oh, so actually just a year after Time
crazy.
Changer, he was in Mysterious
Wow,
Skin.
that's
And
great.
gentle listeners, my listeners of gentle humors might want to cover their ears during this next part. But in Mysterious Skin, it's far different from Time Changer. But Richard Reel actually portrays this man who. So the protagonist of Mysterious Skin is played by a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and he plays essentially like a young underage gay prostitute. And there's this extended sequence where Richard Reel gives Joseph Gordon-Levitt a blowjob, and it's like this really like climactic scene where it like focuses in on Joseph Gordon-Levitt's face like as he's having an orgasm, and it's like he's like flashing back to his childhood like while he's at like the peak of orgasm, while Richard Reel's like
It's usually
sucking his
what I
dick.
do too.
Right. The Mysterious Skin is a documentary, basically.
Yeah.
But it's just really interesting. I mean, obviously, you know, actors, we all know, they don't have souls. They just inhabit the souls of whatever character they're
Wait, what
playing
if
at
that's the
time.
movie he's watching in the theater when he goes to the future? That's the church outing. They see Mysterious Skin.
I did in my EIT video. I made the movie that they're all watching in the theater, gay porno, where it's these 2 guys fucking each other, and the one guy just keeps going, "Oh my fucking god!" and then he runs out. I don't want to spoil. But yeah, it was pretty on the nose.
We'll get to this eventually in our description, but what Vera's referring to is there is a scene later in the movie when Russell Carlisle is in the future. He sees a movie in theaters for the first time
With a church group.
but I guess whatever movie they end up seeing is like very blasphemous because he literally runs out of the theater and he's like, "You mustn't show such things."
Or somebody at just one point just says, "Oh my God." And
That's
he's just
quite
running
possible.
out from that.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. But yeah, so you know, first act of the movie, a lot of discussions of morality, of scholarly takes on morality. That's when the sort of central theme of the movie is introduced, and it gets hammered in throughout the movie. That's all Dr. Carlisle or whatever his name is talking about.
Well, oh, wait, real quick. Richard Reel, right before Time Changer, was in Ken Park, the Larry Clark
No
movie.
fucking way. This guy was in between Ken Park and Greg Araki movies as
Yes.
a Time Changer. This guy's a gay icon.
I know. I would consider this movie part of that.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Oh my God, Richard Reel, my king. He's my new favorite actor. I had no idea.
Oh, and then in Beethoven's
Ash is
Fifth.
going to start a Richard Reel podcast.
Actually, honestly, you could probably get a lot of mileage from that. This
He's
guy was in many fucking
411
movies.
roles. I
Holy
am
shit.
losing my focus. This guy's amazing.
King.
Joe Dirt. Wow.
He's in so much shit that's in
The
post-production right now. What the fuck is that?
We've all been in the fluffer. He also was famously, he was in the movie Office Space as the guy who invents the jump to conclusions mat at the end.
Yeah, which,
right.
yeah, very memorable.
Yeah, no, definitely that and Mysterious Skin, I think, were the first two things that I pegged him for in my mind. Interesting seeing him in this context. But yeah, they set up this whole plot device where, like, our protagonist, Mr. Carlisle, is writing a book of some kind, and it's being peer reviewed by his fellow professors at the seminary. He's having sort of a scholarly argument with Norris Anderson, and Norris is saying, no, you can't just tell a kid that stealing is wrong. You have to say that Jesus says that stealing is wrong. There has to be like an authoritative baseline for morality, or else morality is useless. And Dr. Carlisle is arguing, no, we mustn't turn people away if they were born under a different religion or they're offended by the church in some way. Like, we must still be able to communicate morality. And this is a big fucking deal. I mean, everyone's just losing their shit over this.
Yeah. It's like they're talking about it like it's like an issue that people debate every day.
Yes.
Yeah.
It kind of I guess they did. You know what, actually, Scott, do you remember you and I watched that movie Hell and Mr. Fudge?
Of course.
Which I to this day think is like legitimately, unironically, one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
It's so boring.
It's similar to the first act of this movie. It's all about like theological, like scholarly discussions, and it's about a man basically trying to prove that like there is no hell.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And to show you that he's really doing his research, about 2/3 of the movie is just montages of him doing research, like in a room, just like flipping through books.
Yeah.
Terribly boring.
It's so boring. It's literally one of the most tedious movies I've ever seen. And like, if Time Changer didn't have such a thrilling second and third acts, this movie could have absolutely fallen into the same trap. It's so fucking tedious.
Yeah. But that point they make at the beginning, I actually had that argument in a philosophy class in high school.
Really?
When I was still a Christian, and I was like, well, if there's nothing when you die, why shouldn't I just do whatever I want?
True. And why shouldn't we? Think about
And
it.
the teachers were very frustrated.
I can imagine. I would be too.
Hey, listen, you were owning them by their own logic.
Exactly.
Good sir.
Yeah.
Your facts didn't care about their feelings. I appreciate that.
You were
about
poning liberal cucks over a decade ago.
Yeah. Before it was cool. Before you get likes for that. But yeah, so in order...
I'm so sorry I use caca ironically now. I just want to make a public apology to everybody in America. But I'm just going to continue using caca ironically.
Absolutely. No,
I remember
really
one of
think
you
we
said
should.
time cucker during the movie too. I don't remember what it was in regards to exactly.
There's a big disagreement between Mr. Carlisle and Norris Anderson. So Norris keeps saying... He was like, let's settle our differences. I want to have you over to my house. There's something I must show you. And Mr. Carlisle is just saying in his like completely overwrought turns of phrase, she's saying things like, I mustn't be coming to your domicile, and shit like that. And they just, but Norris keeps trying to get Russell over to his place, and he insists. And finally, Russell Carlisle does go over to Norris's house. And what does he find?
Well, they solve it the way most men do. They bust
Right.
out a time machine.
Yeah.
What is this?
Something incredible.
Yes, but what is it?
It is a singularity chrono displacement device.
I beg your pardon?
This machine can transport a person through time.
You know what though? Norris is pretty patient. Like, what if you had that sick setup in your barn? I'm like, this guy's just like, no, I don't think so. I do not think I will be doing that.
Oh my
Like,
god,
dude, I have like a total like steampunk time machine that actually works in my fucking barn.
And he doesn't even comment on it at all. He goes in that barn twice, and the first time he leaves in a huff. That's the other thing too about this movie is like everything could have just been solved if he just went over to the guy's house in that second scene.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and actually that's a good point. Even if you already knew this guy was totally batshit crazy and you walked in and you saw that setup, you would be like, okay, this is a really cool setup.
Something's up.
Yes.
Something's up here.
Yeah, this guy knows what the fuck he's talking about, clearly. But Russell Carlyle goes over to Norris Anderson's house, and in his barn, he has a complete steampunk time machine set up. It's insane. How in the year of our Lord 1890, did he come up with a time machine?
Don't even have cars yet.
No. But one thing that we were really enamored by when the three of us were watching this was I've got to say, like, the production design was really well done on this movie.
I think that's what makes this stand. I think Dimitri brought up a really good point on the last episode that it's like, you guys really are doing the Lord's work, because like for an EIT video, it's like when I watched this to make an EIT video, there was an end in sight, and it was like, I'm gonna get a few more follows and like I'll make a cool comedy video.
Sure.
But like you're really taking a gamble, especially if it's a movie you haven't seen before. But this one, I would even recommend to the viewers, it's worth just scrubbing through just to see the production design.
Yes.
They really knocked it out of the park.
I think so too.
And just to pat ourselves on the back a little bit, there are many movies we've watched where like, oh, nobody else would want to hear anything about this. This is really bad.
Yep. One or two. This genre, there is definitely a high potential for things to go in a deranged direction. But yes, we will occasionally hit one where it's like, even just talking about it just makes our brains just slowly shut down.
And even worse, I think the worst thing is when we watch one of these that has like Christian movie production values and then turns out not to be a Christian movie. It's just really bad and like sort of in the same vein.
It happens.
Echo Park.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh
my God.
Fantastic film. Save that for another podcast. Yeah. So we're looking at this time machine, and Norris is saying to Russell, he's saying, I'm going to send you on this journey. It's going to resolve all of our differences. He keeps saying this is going to resolve all of our differences. Like once you see the future, all of our misunderstandings will be resolved.
Russell, we cannot continue our disagreement forever.
And you cannot continue this notion of time travel.
Your journey will resolve all our differences.
And Russell's being a little bitch the entire time. He's just in a huff, and he's like, I must go. I must publish my paper. The publishers are waiting.
I must publish my tome. My followers are waiting. I've not uploaded any new content in a fortnight.
And we can all relate to that.
Yes.
That's true.
But he basically gets lured onto the floor of the time machine. Norris sets the time for 100 years into the future, so that would end up being 1990, and says, in 4 days, you must return to the same alley that I beam you to. And while you're in the future, look for a librarian. Her name is Michelle Bain. Look for Michelle Bain. This is the instructions he is given. And with that, in a very Doctor Who type scenario, he is beamed through the power of electricity.
It's an impressive sequence. It's like they have these tight inserts of like the contraptions on the machine. It's almost kind of Raimi-esque too, the like pans. And the effects are pretty good too when he when he disappears and swirls away. Like I would almost go as far to say it holds up better than some non-Christian movies that probably came out the same year.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's really well done.
Yeah. Good job, Richard Cristiano.
Yeah. Rich Cristiano.
Oh, and actually, I did want to point out before we move on, we we talk about the Cristiano brothers, but now that I actually look at the credits, I only really see Rich involved in this movie. Do you know about that, Scott? Did they do stuff
really?
separately?
I think Rich directs them all, but I thought they like both wrote them.
Oh,
or
that could
something
be.
like
That could be. Yeah, Rich is just it just says writer Rich, director Rich too.
Interesting. And Ash, there was a boys Bible study classic that we will be one of the podcasts sometime, but that we failed before, The Secrets of Jonathan Sperry.
Right. I forgot that was a Cristiano. Vera, not to veer too far off from our discussion here, but one film that we tried to review in the first season, and I think we were new to podcasting or whatever, but we just totally bombed the episode. But the movie's so good, is The Secrets of Jonathan Sperry, which is about a kindly old man who wants to mission to as many young boys as possible. He spends the entire movie just collecting young boys. I swear to God, until by the end of the movie, there are like 20 young boys in his living room. It's so fucking funny.
I want to watch that.
It's so good.
And since we just talked about
together.
him, Jonathan Sperry, the guy who plays him, is kind of a Richard Reel knockoff.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah, he has
Looks
a type.
very similar.
Rich Cristiano has a type. I'm not going to lie.
So I think this is the only Cristiano movie I've seen. Do you see through lines from this in their other films? I mean, I don't really see any boy collecting in this.
Yeah.
Definitely in their heavy-handedness.
I mean,
but also the through line in that, like, they enjoy making their movies. Like, they're definitely real movies every time.
yes, and also, what's the classic one? The
Second
one with
Glance?
yeah, doesn't Second Glance have like a sort of time?
Oh
theme?
yeah, it kind of does. It's one of those ones where you kind of like a character wakes up to a new reality where everything's different, and then they're like going crazy, and then they get a second chance to do it again, or a second glance.
A second glance.
Oh, okay.
Second Glance. We've talked about it before on the pod, but listeners who are also Everything Is Terrible fans may know the classic EIT clip of a young David A.R. White going, "Jesus, man." And that's what that's Second Glance. So that's also a Cristiano Brothers production. Wow. But speaking of like time travel and that getting a second glance or whatever, I wanted to talk about the way that this movie in particular handles the classic time travel movie trope.
Yeah,
because
makes no sense.
It really doesn't. It's funny because like every movie that tries to struggle with time travel has to do that thing where they just like they make all these assumptions. And even another time travel Christian movie that we reviewed on our podcast, Assassin 33 AD, also does that thing where it has like as it's going on, it has to keep like inventing its own rules about how time travel works. Characters just sort of say things like, "Oh, well, this is how time travel is." Like,
well, that one was to a ridiculous extent.
Yes. But even this one has things like, well, you can't bring anything back from the future or the machine won't work.
I liked that one though. I was kind
cool.
of surprised I hadn't seen that in another time travel movie.
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
I said under my breath that it doesn't make sense. That side of it does make sense. I think what's weird to me is like, so he's transported to this just like this back alley in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Which, by the way, there aren't that many alleys in Los Angeles, so that's kind of interesting, anachronistic. And he needs to show up there again at a specific time 4 days later. How is this like steampunk time machine going across 100 years and able to like geo position where he is and like zap him up? Like,
right.
Well, it seems very dangerous to me.
It's very dangerous. Well,
because wouldn't the Earth actually be like thousands of miles from there, from wherever they were?
In theory,
the space coordinates or however that works.
Well, where were they in 1890? Were they in Los Angeles?
That's a good question too.
Was Los Angeles?
I mean, think not.
I would think not.
He had a map. So the time machine, you'll notice, has a map on it. So I think the time machine can send you through space and time.
Yeah.
Much like the DeLorean in Back to the Future.
Yeah, right on.
And Scott, you made a joke that the Cristiano brothers like Back to the Future, and I'm on the spectrum so I don't get sarcasm, but I think you might be right. because it does feel like there are kind of these like Back to the Future moments, and what character does literally say you can't bring anything back from the future, I guess.
Right.
But
Yeah.
but even
It could
just
be a
like
little
waking up
nod
in
to
the
it.
alley, yeah, maybe.
Mhm.
I thought the score too, like, kind of worked in the same type of intonations as the Back to the Future score points to. Just the way he like stepped out of the alley and everything.
Yeah, that like twinkly. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Great score, by the way. We loved
Yeah.
the score when we were watching
Yeah,
this
genuinely
film.
good score.
Jasper. I don't remember his name, but
Yeah, me
he
either.
also composed Alita Battle Angel.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah, we looked up on IMDb and found out that the composer of this movie had also worked for Alita Battle Angel. Another Angels. Hey.
Yeah.
That's
Is that a
Christian
Christian
film.
movie? Haven't
I'm pretty
seen
sure.
it.
Didn't see it. I think it's Christian. But some other things I loved about the time travel aspect in this film were like, because the essential premise of him going to the future was like to see how sinful the future was because we neglected to keep putting God first and everything. People were learning their lessons without God in them. And he would just like talk to random people on the street, and like not only would people take him seriously and answer his insane questions, they would also say things like, I got a divorce. Did you know that 50% of marriages end in divorce? Like,
The Lord hates divorce.
Hey, don't be dumping no guilt trip on me, all right? 1 out of 2 marriages get divorced these days. It's not like I'm the only one.
like everyone had a statistic. Like, not only was like came out with their sin, but also like had a statistic about why their sin is like worse now than it was, for instance, in 1890. I thought that was really funny every time it happened.
Yeah, not only were people completely unafraid to open up to this strange man that looks like a cross between Brett Gelman and Tom Green, but way lumpier. They totally had stats on deck
Yes.
to
Yeah.
back up why they're completely normal for
Yes.
the year 2000 or whatever.
And now that you mention it, Russell really didn't give them credit where credit was due. Like they're dropping knowledge on him left and right, and he's just like, I have a lot to teach these people.
Right.
yeah.
I thought God taught you a thing or two about humility, but maybe not. Some other time travel related things. I mean, there were just so many. The entire movie was just him doing the thing where it'll be like, and on Wednesdays we watch a movie, and he just goes, movie? Like basically the entire second half of the movie was just him like cocking his head and like quizzically repeating like a word.
Excuse me, sir. What is this device on your head?
This?
Yes.
This is a radio, man. Where have you been?
Is someone communicating with you?
Shh. Bottom of the 8th. 2 men on.
Bottom of the 8th?
Yeah, and
It's
I feel
incredibly
that's
tedious.
definitely a trope from not even just time travel, but also like Space Visitors too, where they're in
Yes.
like a new culture and place, and they're like, I've never heard of that. But
Yes.
they kind of did a bad job with that too, because like a guy,
Horrible job.
one of the main side characters is always listening to baseball games, and like he doesn't know what baseball is, but like there were semi-pro teams in the United States as of like the 1860s,
Right.
and then he doesn't know what a hot dog is. But like hot dogs were common in the United States as of like the 1870s.
yeah.
Of all the things they could have picked, like for him, they were fucking. I mean, he eventually got to microfiche computers.
Yeah, it was okay.
Microfiche.
Which, by the way, we'll include like a screenshot of this in the when we post the episode. But the guy who teaches him about computers looks like a fucking like
Mid 90s hacker.
yeah, it looks like a hacker's reject, like an overgrown hacker's kid. It's so funny. It's like this is just like people just like use the computer. Like you don't need to be wearing tiny sunglasses to know how a computer works. It's
yeah, and
fantastic.
frosted tips but yeah.
Um,
But thankfully he did.
Also worth pointing out, the character who we mentioned was like listening to baseball on his headphones was played by Paul Rodriguez.
Yes.
Character Eddie.
Yeah, his name is Eddie in the movie. His name is Eddie Martinez, and he's the like, fast talking guy who works at a laundromat and like peppers in a little Spanish with his English to give it a little, a little bit of a Latin flair that adds some dynamic to this movie. And he says like to Russell Carlisle, like, "You're a big hombre," and every time I just wanted Russell to be like, "Hombre." But then at the end, before he goes back in time, Russell gives Eddie a Bible in Spanish. Like he understands I don't know. Maybe they spoke Spanish. I don't know. I'm not a fucking scientist.
But it's weird. It's interesting because, well, Eddie makes a point of saying, I thought my English was bad, and Eddie's English is perfect. He just occasionally says like hombre and amigo and stuff.
Yeah.
But also just the fact that like Russell, if he was from the 1800s, he would definitely be racist. He would not be cool talking to a Hispanic person.
Absolutely. That was the one thing we pointed out. Like, there's a moment in the movie where he gets like invited in to teach a class of high schoolers, and it's like a wonder that the first thing he didn't mention was that there was like at least 4 different ethnicities mingling in the same room.
And just like women there too. Like, why wasn't he like, why are there women in this classroom? There should not ever be. You simply mustn't.
And then he gets kicked out for mentioning that the Bible's true.
Yes. There's
It's
so
just
many
science,
of those.
folks.
Mr. Carlyle.
The Holy Scriptures, students, is always your most reliable science book.
Mr. Carlyle. Mr. Carlyle, this is a public school. You can't talk about religion in class.
There's so many of those moments where he's in the godless future, and then something happens, and he's like, but why am I to be pushed out of this classroom simply for mentioning the name of God?
It's interesting that is a theme that sort of comes up in Christian
Every
movies.
single
One of
Christian
you
movie.
pointed out that like pretty much every single Christian movie has a moment where somebody's getting their freedom of speech violated for talking about the Bible in a public school system.
Yeah. That's like the whole God's Not Dead trilogy is based on that.
Yes.
And they've made hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yes. And most of the second act of the movie is really just like Russell Carlyle running around LA in the year 1990. And, he meets a lot of different characters. Everyone's storylines kind of intermingle. It's, it does that Christian movie thing. We've talked about this many times on the pod, but like where instead of like having maybe one through arc, there's always a section where it's like a character responding to a lot of different people and their lives, and just kind of like hearing everyone's stories, and like that builds into the greater picture of the action of the movie. And I'm just trying to think it might be helpful to go over like some of the character interactions during the second act. There's some of the different types of people he meets, what happens with them.
There's those 2 girls in the diner.
That
2
part's
teens.
so funny.
Talking about how they're going to sneak out and drink later. He scolds them.
Yes, I'm sure. Would you just trust me? We're gonna have the best time. Okay.
Well, who's gonna get the alcohol?
Tommy's older brother.
Young ladies, excuse me, but I could not help but overhear your conversation, and I am shocked at what you are saying.
He slowly turns around the diner. He's like, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation.
Yeah. And I don't mean this in a way that I'm not shaming these women at all because I'm 30, but they look like they're in their 30s. They do not look like young women that would be like sneaking out to like go get drinks.
Well, you don't want to give real teens any bad ideas.
Right. Like those girls aren't even getting carded. Like, but there's just so many funny moments like that. Some characters that we definitely enjoyed. I don't even really understand how he met these people, but there's like 2 male cops.
So one's a cop and one is just a guy, I think.
But how does he even meet them?
They
Through
were
church?
from the church group. Yeah.
Okay. So it's like he's in a church group. Russell Carlyle. He
immediately
joins a church group. He meets just a bunch of people. He's talking to 2 women, one of whom is the teacher who we already mentioned invites Russell into a classroom to give a lecture. But there's 2 men who I think are supposed to be like the husbands of the 2 women that he's initially talking to. And they're both like, something's kind of off about this guy. Like, I wonder what his big secret is, Yeah. So it's also funny because when we first meet him, they're both wearing like very elaborate white shirts. Like one is wearing like a white turtleneck with like a very elaborate like ribbed pattern to it, and the other's wearing this like, I don't know,
like a off-white sweater.
Yeah,
it's almost like the Chris Evans sweater from Knives Out that everybody was raving about. Although he doesn't wear it quite as well. Go figure.
Yeah, well,
who does?
But these guys immediately want to. Like they immediately like have a bone to pick with Russell for some reason.
Yes.
And it's also, I could just be a really thirsty bitch, but and just projecting all this onto them. But there just seems to be so much like sexual tension between these two. Like they love sneaking around. They love calling each other at night and being like, I just found this out about Russell. And like then later in the movie, they're like walking behind him very close. Like it all has very like down low gay vibes to me.
Very much so.
And now that you bring it up again too, how many times do you think they've found themselves in this scenario?
Something's off about that guy over there.
Yeah.
We should go investigate.
I'd like to find out what his little experiment is, though. Tell you what, why don't you run him through the computer tomorrow down at the station? See what you find out. Just for fun.
This was just the first time that it happened to be a time traveler.
Yeah. They actually were onto something this time. But no, I picked up on very similar vibes. There was just something about them. They were both like very handsome, but in this like kind of unique way. They were both wearing like elaborate shirts. I don't know. That's all you need. But
when you know, you know.
You know, exactly. Yeah, those guys are funny. There also is the other recurring secondary character we already mentioned, but she comes in again, Michelle Bain, the Christian librarian. She sort of represents like the anchor to Christianity that allows Russell to feel sort of at home in the present. When Norris Anderson sends Russell into the future, he sends Russell to talk to this Christian librarian and saying that, you know, she understands, she believes that Norris was a part of this like science experiment. She was very friendly and, you know, she offered some comfort and support to him while he was time traveling. So, you know, Michelle is there and she kind of agrees with Russell's views on the decaying morality of the present day. What's some stuff that she says? She
says there's all this bad stuff in movies.
Yes. Yeah, oh my God. That was the best part.
It's so funny too, because she says at one point, she's like, I used to work in the film industry.
Yes.
And he's like, were you a player up on the screen? And she was like, well, no, I worked. She basically says she was like a booker for like a regional theater company, so she wasn't even in the film industry. Yeah. But then goes on to say that it's a godless institution, and
I mean, it's about the lie.
She has a point, yeah.
But still, that was definitely, I'm definitely dropping the sound clip from that into the podcast because like her monologue about how like the film industry is, godless and inspires moral decadence and decay is, I would say, the central thesis statement of Boys Bible Study.
When it comes to the film industry, I've been there and I know how powerful and influential it is to society. I believe that secular entertainment is one of the biggest tools that Satan uses to mislead people. He desensitizes us through it. Murder, violence, sexual immorality, you name it. Sin has slowly but surely become acceptable to us because we see it all the time. So it's no longer shocking to us.
I think she encapsulated like the entire purpose of why we do this podcast.
Yeah.
And, so I'm very glad that we ended up reviewing Time Changer.
There's one scene we skipped over.
Yeah.
We're kind of jumping around it.
That's fine. Yeah. But
before he gets involved with the church group, he goes to mass, and so it's very confusing because I can't really tell how we're actually supposed to feel about the masses he attends, because they're singing, they're doing all the church stuff, but it's still kind of framed in this way like that he's unhappy with it. But there's this moment where he's sitting, it's my favorite moment in the movie. It's actually probably just one of my favorite moments I've ever witnessed in anything. He's sitting next to this guy in a pew. The guy is just staring. It looks like he's staring at his cock first.
Yes.
But then he just quietly says, "That's quite a Bible you got there." And Russell's like, "Yeah, it is." And he's like, "They make the pages so thin in those Bibles." And it's it. They never show the guy again. It's like this weird, like it's like a Twin Peaks interaction or something.
Totally.
It's so weird.
How has the Lord been speaking to you through his word this week?
Well, have you ever noticed the strength of the pages in these Bibles? They are so thin, but they're very difficult to tear. They really hold up.
Yes, they certainly do.
Yeah,
Yeah, that guy's great.
That
I wonder
guy's-
what else he's been in. We should look that up later.
Yeah, I wonder what he's even credited as. He's like, the pages in the Bible so thin yet so hard to tear.
He's just listed as Bible creep.
There's Arthur Roberts, Man in Pew.
Oh,
let's take a look at this motherfucker. He's got a great face.
Has he been in other Christian movies?
Look at the most recent thing he's working on, Angel.
Interesting. I want to see if I recognize anything he was possibly in. He was in a movie called Scared Topless. I don't know what that's about.
I have a few ideas.
Yeah.
But like, what was that scene? Like what was the
insane.
inclusion of that? Like, was that guy the devil? like why? Like,
just some comic relief?
I think it was supposed to be. But Vera, in talking about that, you touched on a really interesting point, which is something that like I don't think the movie did a very good job of explaining. Is Russell Carlyle in general just carries himself with an air of like distaste and disgust in general, but he seems very disgusted by all of the church services he attends, but he never in the movie like explains what's wrong, people in the future. I guess there are a couple points in the movie where he says something to the effect of like, people seem bored at these services, like even the singing, but that just goes on throughout the movie. He never like puts an idea of how to make that better. He never tries to like inspire people to be deeper. He just like sits in every church service and looks around and is like disgusted. He walks out of a service midway while it's happening. He's a fucking asshole.
Yeah, real rude.
Bitch.
Which for as long as the
Motherfucker.
opening is dragged on when they're in the year 1890, we could have used a church service to compare to.
Yes. Yeah. Well, what were they doing?
That's true. Honestly, I mean, but this is just it was too nuanced for something like this. But like, he should have shown up in like an evangelical church, like with jumbotron screens that are bigger than the crucifixes. Like, there would have been an opportunity to talk about how the church has gone wayward, and they completely dropped the ball on that just by focusing on hot dogs and baseball.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. What? I mean. Like, I guess the people weren't very good at singing, but other than that, it just seemed like a church service.
People were having fun. Hell, they were going to different activities. They were like hanging out with each other.
Yeah.
They were going door to door. There's that really funny scene where he goes door to door and like they're talking to some couple and Russell Carlyle sees the child watching television and it's a couple kissing on TV. And he's like, why would this young married couple kiss in front of a small child? Just
He's
him
like,
being a
and the
total
kid's like,
fucking
they're not
dumbass.
married, they're just actors.
Hey, what are you doing, mister?
I cannot fathom that this young married couple would kiss in front of a child. What is becoming of them?
They're not married. They're just actors in a show.
Not married.
Come on, mister. Get out of the way.
And that rips his world apart, and then he goes back to his hotel room and watches TV all night, and then slowly pushing in on his horrified face.
I forgot about that scene. I totally
God,
forgot
what's he
about
watching?
that scene. Fantastic.
What's he watching?
Fantastic.
It's just like late night infomercials. What these deals are amazing. Oh, why is his hair all messed up when he gets out of the van when they go to the movie?
I know.
Just because it's his first car ride?
He kind of, that meme where it's like, you nut, but she keeps sucking?
Yeah.
That's just kind of the face he's making throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
Like various iterations of that.
Yeah.
He kind of just always looks like his world has been rocked a little too much.
Yeah. He's been blinded with science, you know. So basically as he's walking around in 1990, he's meeting a lot of people. He gets into these little mini confusions or conflicts or whatever, but the only people who are really antagonizing him are the two hot like pansexual cops that are sort of like pursuing him. And finally it comes to a head where they're like, I know where this guy's going to be tonight. Like we're going to follow him and see what this big secret is. And it happens to be the same night that Russell is trying to find his way back to the alley so he can get hit by the steampunk lightning bolt and travel back into his proper century. So he's walking. He looks over his shoulder. He sees two handsome gentlemen, just like just a couple paces behind him, just following him. And there's a little bit of a chase sequence. He's ducking behind houses. He turns around. They're still following him. And then finally he gets to the alley and is ready to head home, but not without a confrontation.
Yeah. And it's unclear. I'm still like so confused what they wanted with him. Like they just keep saying, we're going to take you downtown. And it's like, for what?
Right.
Yeah.
Just because he's a time traveler?
Because he's a time traveling freak.
He's just
he's
weird.
A fucking freak.
He's a weird guy.
This is one. Yeah, we're it's I think it's like this guy just came to the future to fuck our wives. Now he's gonna go home. You can't let him do this.
He should be fucking us.
Yeah. Yeah. So meanwhile, Russell is trying to find a way to talk himself out of the situation, and he's saying, you must go from this place. Like it's not safe here. And they're like, don't make me use force, pal. And then, but the Christians, they can't lie. So he's trying to find something. You can see him trying to find something. They say it's not a lie, and he's like, Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming, and he starts sort of playing that card in order to throw them off the trail of what's really happening.
I'm a messenger sent from the Lord.
A messenger from the Lord?
Yes, and I've been sent to warn you that Jesus is coming.
Look, Carlisle, don't make us use force.
Gentlemen, as I have said, Jesus is coming. Look.
He's being a little deceitful.
He's being a little deceptive,
he
honestly.
is sinning. He's lying.
I would say he's sinning. This motherfucker.
You're right.
Starts setting an example, but now I'm gonna go out there and tell a lie myself if it's okay for him.
It's also, not to jump back, but at the beginning of the movie, Norris Anderson tells Russell Carlisle, I just love saying their full names, by the way.
It's so
he tells him to not look up how he died because it's not his place to know.
Right.
The entire movie is not his place to know. He travels to the future and watches a gay porno in a theater. Yeah. Like why? He's sinning all over the place.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's true.
You're right.
Another one of those like arbitrary rules that this movie drew up for how to conduct yourself in the future. But no, he's definitely lying at the end. He's saying to them basically that the rapture is coming. But as he's telling them this, the clouds start to part. A blinding light starts coming through the clouds and both the cops are like covering their eyes, like, yeah, what's going on? And the steampunk lightning cuts through the skies of Los Angeles, strikes our protagonist, and he is beamed up and taken right back into 1890, back on the floor of the time machine that started this action. And he gets to talk with his friend Norris again.
Who's wearing those sweet steampunk glasses to protect himself.
It's a cool shot when the flashes. It kind of jump cuts, and it's artistically done.
It's a banger.
The time travel sequences in this, I genuinely like them.
They look good.
Me too. He now having a taste of the godless future of what has happened because he didn't write his book good enough.
So I think he traveled to a timeline where his manuscript got published as is before Norris sent him back.
Right.
Yeah. So ideally, he's learned his lesson, because then he rewrites the book, I guess, thus saving humanity.
Yes.
But I was thinking, we're just seeing like a kind of stack of papers. Is it a book now or is it a script? I really wanted them to like open it up because it's now called Time Changer.
Right.
Could be in script format. Movie. And his friend in the future, the librarian, she used to work in the biz.
I think you're onto something.
This is it. He wrote the first movie. This is what Time Changer is about.
This is actually Rich Cristiano's life story.
Holy shit.
Maybe Rich Cristiano's like great grandpa was like, open this up when you're 18 years old.
And he opened it and was like, "Ugh, this is poorly written." But I guess I'll do it.
Yo, Grandpa, this sucks. But I mean, okay.
Mm-hmm. It's like Back to the Future 2, but instead of sports bets, it's just the Time Changer script. You'll make a modest amount of money with this.
Yeah, so that is essentially the plot and what happens in Time Changer.
But you got to talk about that scary ending. The scary last scene.
What happened?
Where Norris Anderson keeps trying to send a Bible to the future.
Yeah.
So he starts at 2100 or 2100 AD. And the Bible doesn't go to the future. So then he goes down to 2090.
Right. And just to interject in the reason he's doing that is because right after he comes back from the future, Russell Carlyle says, but like, are you sure this is the farthest that the time machine can go? And he said, I've never really tried that. And, the seed is planted for him to do an experiment. How far is the future?
Yeah.
Norris, I believe I was witnessing the last days. Did you ever see how far this machine would send someone into the future?
To directly answer your question, no. No, I have not.
So that's when...
And then he basically we find out in that last scene that Russell did go back during end times pretty much.
Yes.
Like it was just about to end. It's kind of, it's kind of actually pretty ominous. Like
yes,
and
very
kind
ominous.
of like because the rest of the movie is so insanely stupid, it's hard to appreciate it on this level. But I can again say it was like artistically done in like a Twilight Zone-y kind of way.
I completely agree.
Do y'all think Eddie got raptured? You think he read the Bible fast enough?
I think he read the Bible from beginning to end in the period of 3 days. You can't put it down.
Yeah.
It's one of those, you pick it up, you can't put it down.
He was able to read it because it was in Spanish. Thank God.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. Not always baseball games on.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So team, what do we think of this film?
I give it 500 out of 500 very thin but hard to tear Bible pages.
I'm going to give it 2100 out of 2090 out of 2080 out of 2070 out of y'all the end times are now.
No. Oh no.
Oh, no.
I'll give it I'm gonna give it 2 out of 2 hot cops. God bless. Perfect film in every way. We love it.
Fantastic time changer, y'all.
Vera Drew, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
The Boys Bible Study and sharing this movie with us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
And everyone check out Hot Topics.
You.
Yes, check out Hot Topics with Vera Drew.
Christian TV show.
It's a Christian. Yeah, it's a deeply Christian.
Yes,
it's definitely not. It's definitely not basically a cult, Mr. Rogers.
Well, it's a good sell.
Be sure to follow Vera at Vera Drew 22. Every follow you give her is closer to her being a Hot Topic influencer.
Yeah, and like it doesn't. You can mute me.
Right.
Like you can follow me and mute me and I benefit and you helped somebody out.
That's your good deed for the day. That's a good deed for the day. But remember, you can't get into heaven through good deeds alone. You must invoke the Lord. So therefore, Jesus commands you to follow Vera Drew 22 on Twitter.
It's your choice, but it's not your choice.
Can I plug 2 other things real quick?
Absolutely.
I produced a new Tim and Eric show called Beef House that comes out on March 29th.
Fuck yes.
It's honestly, I'm biased because I was an EP on it, but like it's the best thing Tim and Eric have ever made.
No
like
fucking way. I'm so
it's
excited.
like we made, like when you hear Tim and Eric sitcom, you have a specific idea in your head, and that's not what Beef House is.
Whoa.
And I'm just so fucking proud of it. So I have to mention that. Please watch that.
Congratulations.
Also, date tentative, but I am currently putting together my own cut of Todd Phillips' Joker with
Really?
Brie LaRose. Yeah.
We got to talk about that as soon as this podcast is over.
Yes. And in May, I am hopefully going to be screening it because I don't think it's going to be something I'm ever going to be able to put online because it's going to be an incredibly illegal movie.
Yes.
Everything we're using in it is not going to be owned by us, and we are shooting supplemental scenes without spoiling anything that are all things that can and should get me arrested. So it's going to be quite the treat, and that's coming in May. So be on the lookout for that and follow me for updates.
Also, I didn't even get to make you brag and put you on the spot and say that you got nominated for a fucking Emmy last year.
Yeah,
that's
hell
amazing.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't win, but yeah,
Got nominated for a fucking Emmy. That's amazing for your work editing. This Is America? Is that the name of it?
Who is America? But it's okay. Everybody calls it This Is America. every meeting I go into, they start by saying, I loved This Is America. And I don't correct them because it makes them feel bad.
Yeah. You don't want to be a Russell Carlisle in the meeting.
No one wants to be a Russell Carlisle. Vera, thank you so much. And
thank you.
To all listening out there, peace be with you.
And also with you.
God bless. Bye.
Bye.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I feel your love in me, it's coming from within. Oh my God, my devotion is so unwavering. Divine emotions when you enter me. Every day